In February 2004, an internet user by the name of Hasumi posted a series of strange messages on 2channel, one of Japan's most popular online forums at the time. The posts began innocuously enough, but quickly took a disturbing turn, capturing the attention of other users who followed the story in real time. Hasumi explained that she was on her usual train ride home from work. It was late, around 11 p.m., and the train was relatively empty. As the train left a familiar station, she settled into her seat, expecting to reach her destination within the hour. However, after about 20 minutes, she noticed something odd. The train had not stopped at any of the usual stations. Initially, she thought she might have dozed off and missed her stop. But when she checked the time, she realized she had been awake the whole time. The scenery outside the window had changed drastically. The familiar cityscape had given way to dense forests and rolling hills. The train was moving faster than usual, and the darkened tunnels it passed through were long, with no signs of light or life on the other side. Hasumi began to worry. She looked around the carriage, but none of the other passengers seemed alarmed. They sat quietly, staring straight ahead, their faces pale and emotionless. Hasumi decided to approach the conductor, hoping for an explanation. But when she tried to ask him where the train was going, he ignored her completely, as if she wasn't even there. Growing more anxious, she returned to her seat and checked her phone. She wanted to call someone for help, but to her frustration, her phone had no signal. The GPS couldn't determine her location, and any attempt to make a call resulted in failure. She tried sending messages on 2channel, asking for advice from other users, who urged her to stay calm and keep trying to reach someone. As the train continued on its mysterious journey, Hasumi noticed that the once populated carriage was slowly emptying. People were disappearing, seemingly vanishing into thin air. The lights inside the train flickered ominously, casting eerie shadows that seemed to move of their own accord. Finally, after what felt like hours, the train began to slow down. Hasumi peered out the window and saw a sign that read Kisaragi Station, a name she had never seen before. Confused, she watched as the train came to a halt at the deserted platform. The station was completely unfamiliar, with no signs of civilization in sight. The platform was overgrown with weeds, and the air was thick with an unsettling stillness. Hasumi hesitated, but with the train sitting idle and no one else around, she decided to step out onto the platform. As soon as she did, the train doors slammed shut behind her, and the train vanished into the darkness, leaving her alone in the eerie silence. She walked through the station, calling out for help, but the only response was the rustling of the wind through the trees. The station itself was in a state of decay, as if it hadn't been used in decades. The walls were cracked and covered in graffiti, and the windows were broken and boarded up. The more she explored, the more she felt an overwhelming sense of dread, like she was being watched by unseen eyes. Desperate, Hasumi turned to her phone again, trying to get a signal, but to no avail. She updated her post on 2channel, describing the eerie atmosphere and the strange sensation that something was terribly wrong. The other users were just as baffled, urging her to leave the station immediately. Suddenly, Hasumi heard the faint sound of drums in the distance, accompanied by what seemed to be chanting. The sound grew louder, more rhythmic, as if something or someone was approaching. Panic set in. She knew she had to leave, but the only way out seemed to be the tracks that led into the forest. With no other choice, she started walking along the tracks, hoping they would lead her back to safety. The forest around her was dense and dark, the trees towering ominously above her. The chanting and drumming followed her, growing louder with each step she took. Hasumi's posts became more frantic as she described her growing fear. She reported seeing shadowy figures moving in the darkness, their shapes shifting and blending with the trees. The drumming grew louder, more intense, until it seemed to echo inside her head. As she walked, the forest seemed to close in on her, the path narrowing until it was barely wide enough for her to pass. She felt an overwhelming sense of dread, as if something terrible was waiting for her just out of sight. The air grew colder, and a thick fog began to roll in, obscuring her view. In her final post, Hasumi described a blinding light that suddenly appeared in front of her, accompanied by a deafening roar. She screamed for help, but her voice was swallowed by the darkness. Then, without warning, her post stopped. The thread fell silent, with no further updates from Hasumi. The users of 2-Channel were left in shock and disbelief. Some tried to search for Kisaragi Station, but no such place existed on any map. Others speculated that Hasumi had stumbled upon a parallel world, or had been taken to a realm beyond human comprehension. Despite numerous theories, no one could explain what had happened to her. To this day, the story of Kisaragi Station remains one of Japan's most chilling urban legends. It serves as a reminder of the mysteries that still linger in the world, and the possibility that some places, no matter how ordinary they seem, may hold dark and terrifying secrets. Whether Kisaragi Station exists in reality, or is merely a product of collective imagination, one thing is certain: those who hear the story will never forget it.